Hey everyone, I'm making this video for those who want to make sake in the near future, so I would suggest you watch this first. I've watched a few videos on sake making and it's so long to do. First of all, it's gonna take you at least 2 days. Usually when you make alcohol with simple ingredients or even with grapes, even with fruits, you blend your ingredients together, whether it's sugar, water, juice, yeast, anything you'd like to add in it, rice, grains, hops. Everything is done within 30 minutes, 1 hour. It's all in one day. However, with sake, you have to prepare the rice. So first of all, you need to steam it. You need to cover it overnight. You need to spray it. It needs to be moldy. So it's a whole process. And I would like to admit that when making beer, I use either liquid malt extract or powdered malt extract. Therefore, I do not use the grains. However, the grains need preparation. So drop a comment below and let me know how long does it take to prepare the grains. I'm sure it takes less than a day. You remove the sprouts. You don't need to leave them overnight. You should be able to make beer in a day with malt and hops and barley. But I'm curious to know, for all those home brewers out there who like using the original ingredients, let me know how long it takes you to make beer. I did a little research on the ins and out of making beer without using malt. So you can use barley to transform into malt. This is next level because this process is long. It takes 4 to 5 days. And the first step is to soak the barley, which are grains, in water for 2 hours. And then you have to let it air out for 5 hours. Make sure the grains don't drown, but you have to make sure that they're hydrated. So you have to spray water on this barley for 3 days just to make sure it keeps its moisture. And you can run your fingers through it just to make sure there's no water buildup at the bottom or it's not too dry. This is the process of germination. Germination is when there's little sprouts coming out of the grains. And for this to be completed, you have to wait 3 to 4 days and wait also for it to dry. But once it's being dried, do not dry it with air that's too hot or else it will destroy the necessary enzymes to make malt. My suggestion is if you want to make beer quicker, just use malt instead of using barley to transform into malt with the malting process. Going back to sake, I just like to talk about the smell. Got a bottle of sake from the store and I just wanted to smell it to determine what it smells like. And it's hard to describe because it's not like anything I've smelled before. I would say it could be on the sour side. It doesn't smell like alcohol, not like typical alcohol anyways. I would say sake could smell a little bit on the sour side. As for the taste, it tastes like alcohol that's between 10 and 20%. However, that's hard to gauge because it doesn't taste like wine. It's just a unique type of alcohol that's made with rice. But mind you that you can't use any rice. We typically buy rice that are either basmati or regular rice that's a little less long than basmati rice. However, the rice that you need to use for sake has to have a lot of sugar. Therefore, glutinous rice is preferred and other rice with shorter grains. And some people might be asking, how do you retrieve sugar from rice? Because there is no sugar in rice. There's only starch. Actually, it's the yeast that converts the starch into sugar. So once your rice is prepped meaning it's washed, it's steamed, and once it's steamed, it has to have a specific texture. So it's soft, but not gummy. So it's right before it becomes gummy. It's not hard either. It's too hard for you to eat, however, but it's not mushy. So if it's too mushy and you can squeeze it and it stays in your hands, you have to restart, wash new rice, and steam it again. Just an FYI, when you steam it, the water does not touch the rice. Going back to the yeast transforming the starch into sugar, you have to use a specific type of yeast for sake, and it's an enzyme called kojikin. This kojikin is a yeast, and once you sprinkle it over the rice, it will unlock sugar. However, you can only add this koji yeast once your rice is at 30 degrees Celsius, because if it's too cold, the yeast just stays dormant and it doesn't really activate or do its job. And for those that are curious what this kojikin yeast is, it actually looks like garlic powder. Okay, so just recapitulating, so you've washed your rice, you've steamed it, and you added the koji yeast on top. So this koji yeast is going to unlock the sugar, and it takes a while to unlock the sugar, so you just have to put a damp cloth on top of this rice in the container and put it, let's say, in an oven that is not working, so just in a closed area overnight. And you want to make sure that your rice stays moist. So once overnight, you look at it the next morning, you could spray a little bit of water on the rice to make sure it stays moist. And you should spray every 10 hours. So you can see that it's a long process. And to maintain humidity in the rice, not only do you have to spray it, but you can stir it a bit to make sure that the humidity is everywhere. After 20 hours of putting a little water, stirring, your rice will have a little bit of white fuzz. So this is equivalent to almost mold, but not mold, because mold is black and green. Therefore, if you see black and green on your rice, you failed and you have to start from the beginning. Therefore, washing the rice, steaming it, putting it inside the oven that's off, and make sure it's humid. So you have to be really precise on how this rice is going to turn out before the fermentation process even begins. And once this rice has white and fuzziness on top of it, then you do the same thing with another batch of rice and you do the whole process again. So you can add both together. The new rice that you're gonna steam and wash and everything with the old rice that's already fuzzy. One thing to do to avoid spoilage is, I must admit this is odd, but it's to add hops in water, stir it, and then add it to the rice so it doesn't become moldy. Drop a comment below and let me know if you've ever done this, and if not, what tricks do you use to avoid spoilage in your home brew? And speaking of those hops that you add, it's important to boil these hops in water. And if you don't want to use hops, or if you don't have any hops, you can use citric acid to avoid mold. Once this is done, some brewers have added EC1118 yeast on top of that rice that's already starting to ferment in order to ferment more. And sake fermentation should take 1 to 2 weeks maximum, and the ABV should be roughly 10 to 20%. And once you're done, it will most inevitably be blurry. So you can filter the rice, because you'll have your liquid on top, your alcohol, and then the rice at the bottom, and you can filter out the rice and cold crash your sake to make sure that the yeast falls to the bottom and that the top part is clear. Make sure to cold crash it for 24 hours, and some have said that it was yellowish. And the color should be roughly like white wine. So it should be white, could be a little yellow, but not too much. Other sake makers have said that it takes 3 months to make it clear. However, with a cold crash, it should be quicker because you're putting it in the fridge. And FYI, cold crash is just putting your fermentation jar inside the fridge so you can accelerate the clearing process. Some have also used clay. However, I typically do not use clay in my home brewing process. Let me know in the comments below if you've used this method of clarification or even turbo clear. And once you're done clearing your sake, you can drink it and enjoy your long hours of work. And if you'd like tips and tricks on how to make various types of drinks, you can book a class. The link is in the description below. And if you found this video valuable, share it with a friend, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at AlcoholYouBack. We post more content there, and I'll see you in the next video.